Good evening all, and welcome. Walmart for many is considered a necessary evil. Its incredibly low prices means it's very competitive, but it also attracts some unsavory characters through its doors, as some of you may already know. I hope you're ready, because it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This story took place when I was 19. I was a year into my community college life, paying it off little by little, working a part-time job. But I hadn't had a boyfriend in a while. My mother, who was good friends with the woman who did our nails, would often talk about me to her. Soon enough, the nail lady had formed a solution by trying to hook me up with one of her other clients' sons. My mother humored me to this idea by saying that I might be able to get a free meal out of the deal, an appealing offer for a college student, and I saw no reason not to go along with it. I dolled myself up, because even though I wanted it to be a casual encounter, I still tried to make myself appear nice to make my dates feel proud to be seen with me. I just take this as common courtesy for all dates, unless there was a prior agreement. It was nothing too fancy, a pair of nicely fitted jeans and a lacy cream-colored top, under a figure-flattening maroon hoodie with a flower print and some snow boots. It was late fall, and I live in a place that gets snow early. My makeup, though I don't usually wear a lot, flattered my face, and my hair was in neatly placed curls around my glasses. The date went well, and while he wasn't exactly the type of guy I would personally find attractive, he was really funny and a good guy. Despite that, we said our goodbyes to each other, and I headed my merry way back home, which was roughly 30 minutes away from the restaurant. While on my way home, I remembered that my headphones had broken earlier that day, as one side refused to work, which I found incredibly irritating. So I glanced at the clock and noticed it's just past 11:30 at night. Not too many places were open after 11, except for the Walmart that was on the other side of the road that just happened to lead to my house, approximately 20 minutes away and en route from the restaurant. I had been to this particular Walmart with my family a lot, due to it being the closest to my house. I live in a subdivision on the edge of a small town, surrounded by farmlands and other small towns. But this particular Walmart was situated just on the shoulder of an intersection that led right to the interstate, so it was easily accessible by both in-town folk and people just passing through. I pull into the parking lot and wedge my car between the other two cars at a spot that is fairly close to the front, yet also a little off to the side. Eager to get my errand over with, I pull out my purse, lock my car, and start making my way through the dark parking lot to the illuminated entrance at the front, passing through the handicap section that was mostly barren, save for one small red car. I noticed the driver, a 35-year-old looking large, bulky man with a red plaid shirt on and huge meaty fingers gripping the steering wheel in total silence. I noticed the car did not have a handicap sticker or mirror hang, but the driver was present, so I just assumed he was waiting for someone to come out and wanted a parking spot near the entrance so that he could come out. I thought no more of it, but decided to give him some space, so I gave the car a wide berth when trying to pass, and then I heard him call out to me. I look over to him, and he waved me over to his car, and after a brief pause to assess that he was in fact talking to me, as it was a pretty well-designed parking lot, but I didn't know the man, and had no idea why he would want to speak to me. I took a few tentative steps towards his car, but left at least 9 feet of space between us. With me being 5'5", I could judge that this man easily had a foot on me if not more, and I wanted the space to get behind a car should he decide he wanted to get out of his. I rotated the keys in my hand so that the keyblade was poking out between my forefinger and thumb. "You sure are beautiful," he slowly begins saying. "Thanks," I say. I wasn't trying to be rude, but just eager to get inside. "Do you know which way the interstate is?" he asks me. And to me, this was the weirdest question he could have asked, because he was literally facing towards it. It was in his line of sight. He either had to have just come from it, or was a local, and neither would ask a question like that, because both would know the answer, and his eyes never left me. So with proverbial raised hackles, I answered him. "That road. There it is," and I gestured with my thumb. "Go out the parking lot and over the pass. Left side goes to capital city, right goes to the next state." "Thank you, miss," he says. He takes a moment to pause, eyeing the space I had so carefully set between us. "You sure are beautiful," he says again, even slower as I feel his eyes crawl across my silhouette, and I suppress a shudder as I see him bite his lip and move his hand lowly over the steering wheel. "I should get going before the store closes." I interrupt him. I lie, I know. The store was open until 3 a.m., and any local would know that. But that seemed to shut his mouth. And I take that as my dismissal and turn on the balls of my feet, hastening my pace until I'm well illuminated and hear the automatic doors close behind me. I take more than necessary retrieving a cheap pair of earbuds from the electronics section and paying at self-service. Deciding that coming out the way I came in was the last thing I wanted to do, I made my way to the alternate exit on the other side of the store. Before going back out, I peeked my head from behind a wall to check if his car was still there, and it was. He's staring at the entrance where I had gone in, his engine still running, and his fat fingers drumming against the wheel. Thoroughly creeped, I thought about his question to me about the interstate, and just how close we were going across state lines, and just how late it was at night, and how rural this area was. I decided I most definitely didn't want to have another encounter with this man, so I zipped my hoodie up fully, so that nothing on me could reflect any light. I put my hood on and casually make my way towards the nearest row of cars, ducking slightly behind the nearest one. Not quick enough for the movement to catch his attention in the rearview mirror, but enough that I'm difficult to see if he did look up. I weave through the rows, down a ways away from him, and cross the road and back up towards my car. I make it and peel out the other way. The entire 20-minute ride home I check behind me every so often to make absolutely certain I see no headlights in my rear view. Eventually I make it home, lock all the doors, throw the headphones on my bed, and pass out under the covers. Creepy guy from Walmart, I don't know what your game was, but I'm sure glad I wasn't a part of it. Please, let's not meet again. My sister and I needed to go to Walmart to pick our mum up some groceries. We were in the freezer aisle when I looked up and noticed a man staring at me. Me being me, I said, "That man must think I'm cute because he won't stop staring at me." We didn't think much else of it. We continued our shopping when I noticed him staring at me again, this time in a different aisle. I was starting to get creeped out. I told my sister maybe we should try going into a completely different part of the store. We went into women's clothing, and he followed. Electronics, he followed. Realizing how scary this was, we decided to hurry up and check out and leave. We were relieved when we didn't see him as we were checking out. We were heading for the doors, and the coast looked clear. I turned my head as we were right about to exit the store, and there he was. He came out of the bathroom right in front of where the checkout was. I knew he saw me, so we hurried to go to the car and put the groceries away. Of course, his vehicle was parked only a few spots away from ours. We eventually decided to leave, and when we did, he began backing out as well. He was very obviously following us. We parked in a different spot. Sure enough, so did he. I told my sister we should cut through one of the parking lots to get to the main road a different way. Luckily, this man got stuck behind a line of traffic waiting to leave Walmart as we were hurrying away. I'm not sure what his true intentions were, but I was later told how popular sex trafficking is in that area. I don't want to find out, so let's never meet again, Walmart creep. This happened around 3 years ago. My youngest was 3 months old, nearly 4 months. Now, there are 2 Walmarts near me, and both roughly a 15-minute drive. One is in a sketchy area, and the other in a nicer one. I needed to pick up a new pump since I was breastfeeding and had just gone back to work. I was in the children's area with my Lou in his car seat covered by a blanket, as he had been sleeping. There was this old lady looking at baby stuff, and she asked me about my baby. I answered politely but short, and she proceeded to tell me about her grandbabies and how her whore of a daughter-in-law kept them away from her. By this point, Lo wakes up and lifts his blanket, and I start to walk away and talk to him. I go and look at baby clothes, and this lady is right behind me just staring at me. I felt like something was wrong, so I left the baby section and went to the electronics, trying to get away from her. I didn't see her behind me, and then I just think how silly I am. I've watched way too many serial killer documentaries, and I just chuckled to myself. I remember I forgot to get bags to store my milk in, and then decide to return to the baby section. It was just me and Lo in the aisle, and I bent down to look at the section of storage bags when something just felt off. There's this old lady again, sneakily trying to unbuckle my son. I told her to get the hell away from him, and she then proceeds to try and take the whole baby carrier with my baby in it. She was yelling about how it was her right as a grandmother to get her grandchild, and how this was her baby. By this point, I'm yelling like a madwoman, and here come 2 employees that separate us but left my child in the middle. I'm trying to get to my son as they're trying to figure out what's going on. The old lady starts telling them that I was trying to kidnap her baby. I'm in tears, and I tell them it's my baby, and show them pictures of my son and I along with the rest of my family that were on my phone. I asked to be escorted to my car, and they did that while they made the woman wait for me to be gone. She was yelling some crazy stuff at me, and I ended up sending someone else to go buy what I needed at Target, and I haven't stepped into that Walmart again since. When I was a young kid, we had a favorite drive-in theater we liked going to during the summer that was pretty much in the middle of nowhere. It was sort of a family tradition to pick out a movie that we weren't entirely sure we wanted to see, wait until it was one of the 2 movies being shown at the drive-in, and pack our SUV with blankets, lawn chairs, and any family friends willing to come with us. Since the theater allowed you to bring in outside food, if you paid $10 in addition to the original charge for the entire car, we would hit a grocery store, usually Walmart, and pick up some goodies as well as any non-perishable items we needed for the week. We would usually split up into groups so that we could easily get to the drive-in early enough to pick out the good parking spots. Since I was around 9 or 10 at the time, I was considered old enough to go into a nearby aisle to pick up a few items as long as my parents were nearby. At this point, my mum was on the other side of the Walmart with my little brother, and I was teamed up with my dad, who sent me to pick up some peanut butter and some jelly. I, being about 9 years old, and eager to prove to them that I can be trusted to do things by myself, run off to the jelly aisle, where I am about to grab the requested items when I notice a very, very creepy looking man in the aisle standing right in front of the jelly. He was an older man in farmer garb, including the overalls and the trucker hat, but what really scared me was his mouth. Now I know that he had probably been an avid chewing tobacco fan when he was younger, which probably led to some form of mouth cancer, which probably led to his jaw being removed due to said cancer. But to the naive and scared 9-year-old, I thought I was seeing a zombie. I'm sure if it had healed correctly, it would have made less of an impression on 9-year-old me, but the fact that it hadn't, as well as a look in his eyes, and the posture he had made me nervous. I was waffling between trying to grab the jelly real quick or cut my losses and tell my dad I couldn't find it, when the man turned and smiled. I, of course, proceeded to nope out the aisle where my dad was and tell him I couldn't grab it. So my dad sort of rolled his eyes and walked me back to the aisle, which is where the man was still standing and smiling, and staring in the direction I had ran out the aisle from. My dad proceeded to usher me to the other side of the store to find something else. At this point I thought I was being silly, and started to think the guy was really just a harmless old man with some sort of disease trying to get his groceries, when my dad told my mum not to go to the jelly aisle and that we were leaving. I'm not entirely sure if the guy was just a harmless old man recovering from mouth cancer, or a dangerous person. I felt a little guilty that I'd judged him based solely on looks, but I would prefer if we did not meet again. I am a woman who grew up under the impression that I was ugly. I always walked with my head down and my eyes down. I know this seems like something stupid to start with, but bear with me. I've always been fascinated by the samurai era in Japan, so I have always collected memorabilia from the era. I was setting groceries with my little girl who was about 13 months old at the time. This guy had been following me through the store. He was wearing a brown rain jacket up with a hood. Not acting unusual, it was raining buckets. As anyone who's ever walked through a Walmart and paid attention, you've noticed there is a natural flow to the aisles. I'm just getting milk, bread, and a couple of other things, and I went against the flow. This guy in the brown raincoat follows us through the store. He had a strong body odor, foul as if he had foregone bathing since puberty, some odd 40 years ago. He didn't have a cart and only followed us closely. I finished my shopping, noting that the guy followed us and had picked up a few random things. I checked myself out and hurried out the door into the sprinkling darkness. As I was placing my little one in her seat, I hear a foot behind the wheel of the cart, putting it between myself at the end of my car. As I was parked to the left of a cart track, it was what the back end of the car is pressed against, leaving maybe an inch of room between the car and cart. The now familiar stench overwhelmed me, and I heard a low, coughing laughter. I had begun prepping to put the milk in the floorboard, which is after my earlier shopping memorabilia collecting included moving a rather large, closely wrapped katana umbrella. Instinct demanded that instead of simply moving the umbrella, I take it out, swing automatically for the fences, and I missed. The man had grabbed my cart and was standing opposite me with that low, insane laughter. I snarled, shoved the cart at him, then made as if to withdraw the blade from the umbrella katana's umbrella part. As a survivor of previous attacks, I had taken to training at a local dojo. I looked him straight into his buggy eyes and told him to get lost. His eyes went to my hands, and for the longest second his mouth stood open. The second my hand let go, I went off, and the man ran away with the mark of my umbrella across his face, slamming into the Walmart asset protection associate who I knew from high school. As they loaded him into the police car almost 20 minutes later, He just kept staring at me, his mouth moving, with no words coming out. I hope we never meet again. I am a 22-year-old male. I'm a little stocky and muscular, but not fat. Not someone you would try to actively avoid in a dark alley, but also not someone you would really want to pick on for being puny. I'm your average guy. I was with my girlfriend. It was around 10 p.m. and it was dark out. We left a friend's house to meet some other friends at an Applebee's 20 minutes away. We pull out the driveway and are on our way. 3 minutes down the road, I noticed a very large truck approaching us very closely. It swerved a little bit, but the driver didn't seem drunk. The speed limit was 45 miles an hour and was going a solid 50 miles an hour, as it was a fairly straight road and not many cars were on it. The driver then started flashing his lights. This is normally a pretty universal sign that either my lights are off or he wants me to pull over, or I'm not driving adequately. I recently had my car inspected and passed, so it wasn't the lights. I was driving just over the speed limit, and there was no way that I was pulling over. Plus, it was a passing area, so he could have passed if he wanted to, and I kept driving. He was literally right behind me, not 15 or 20 feet, but right behind me, and there were no other cars around, so I decided to start taking side roads. I knew the area pretty well, so I was confident. Meanwhile, my girlfriend just really wanted Applebee's. Classic girlfriend. So I took some random side road, and of course he followed right behind me, still flashing his lights, and I kept turning into other roads, trying to lose him, but he was staying right on my tail. Finally, my girlfriend realized how weird this was and began getting a little nervous. I was nervous too, and our area has a high crime rate, and some gang initiations involve running people off the road, forcing people to pull over, and shooting them, and other car-related mumbo-jumbo. So we were both scared that this could be the case, and I kept taking side roads, as he kept staying right behind me. Finally, we arrive at Walmart. This Walmart has a back road where the trucks go to unload. I took the turn on the road without even using my blinker, still trying to lose him, and I ended up driving at 80 miles an hour on the small back road, but he literally did not stop. The small road wraps around to the main parking lot, and I skipped all stop signs and ignored all safety rules of the road. Thanks to the fluorescent Walmart lights, I was able to see that the truck was red and beaten down. I could see the Applebee's in the distance, so I decided that I would park and just deal with this like a man. At this point, my girlfriend was actually tearing up. This whole ordeal may not sound that scary, but trust me, it was. Once I pulled into the Applebee's parking lot, I noticed the red truck was no longer following us. He just disappeared. I looked at my girlfriend to try and comfort her, and when I looked up, he was gone. This was honestly terrifying. I pull up to the Applebee's to meet my friends inside, and they could tell that we were visibly shaken up. We were so shaken we didn't even get any food to eat, even though we were super hungry. I managed to glance out the window and saw the same red truck parked 3 or 4 rows behind our car, just sitting there with the lights on. I'd had enough. I grabbed a steak knife from the table and went outside to find out what was going on. When I reached the truck, no one was inside. The back seat was full of duct tape, random tools, tarp, and other everyday items that seemed especially creepy at the time. I took pictures of the license plate and waited around for the owner to return, but he didn't. There's no doubt he saw me waiting by his truck, sweatshirt hood up, looking like a weirdo. I called the police to let them know what was happening. I was told to be very careful, as gang initiations were starting to pick up in our area. The truck was the same one that followed me around, and yes, it could have just been some teens trying to be funny, but don't mess with me or my girlfriend, or Applebee's. So, Mr. Truck Driver who ruins appetites and may want to kill me, please, let's never meet again. This happened 4 years ago last summer. I'm 23 now, but was 18 at the time, and am a girl. I used to live in a town that gets very hot during the summer, between 95 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit daily. I went to my local Walmart to do some light shopping and pick up a pair of flip-flops. As I was in the shoe aisle, I noticed an older guy, probably in his late 30s to early 40s, standing there as well. My town has a good amount of drug users, and he appeared to be one of them. When he saw me, he started to say really gross sexual things to me. I'm used to being catcalled and experience this thing a lot, so I just ignore him, pick out a pair of shoes and continue with my shopping. He follows me down a few more aisles and then stops following me. After I pay for my things, I leave out the exit of the shop towards the parking lot. The Walmart is part of a strip mall with other stores, so I start walking right towards the end of the strip mall to catch the bus back home. After walking 20 seconds, I notice the man standing next to the car in the parking lot, talking to someone in it. He sees me and breaks away from the car and begins to head in my direction. I continue walking, and he begins to walk parallel next to me in the road, about 10 feet away, still saying really gross things to me. At this point, it's more than just creepy comments in the store. He's following me outright, and noticed that I was approaching the entrance to a John's Incredible Pizza, which is a kids' pizza and play place here in California. So I run to the doors and make my way inside. I told the girl at the counter that there was a guy following me outside and asked if I could stay inside for a few minutes until he was gone. She let me, and also sent 2 male workers to walk all the way around the store to see if they could find him. They didn't, so I decided to stay about 10 more minutes before I left to go to the bus stop. When I got to the stop, there were 2 women there. When I told them what happened, they promised to stay with me and walk to keep me company. So to the creepy guy who followed me through the parking lot, let's not meet again. This situation was also in broad daylight, so I decided I needed a can of pepper spray in my purse. Ladies, protect yourselves. This happened a few years ago. My boyfriend and I had gone to Walmart and had been there for about 20 minutes at this point. We're in the bra section, and he tells me he has to go to the restroom. He leaves to the very front of the store while I'm in the centermost part. I'm standing at the bras and notice a large man walking towards me. Keep in mind, I'm a very paranoid person, and I'm always looking over my shoulder for multiple reasons. This guy stops right next to me, like if I lifted my elbow I could have touched his. I tell myself not to be a paranoid freak and resume looking at bras. Well, in the time it took me to look at the first guy, a different guy ended up on my other side and is looking at the bras too. Both men are on the phone, and I audibly gasp, but then immediately assumed they were on the phone with their women. Dumb, I know, but I tried not to scare myself. I decided to give up on bras for the moment and went to look at underwear instead. As I walked to the underwear aisle, a different man walked into the same aisle looking right at me. He stopped at one end and I stopped in the middle, and I called myself a fool for profiling these men and continued browsing. Then as I was about to leave the aisle from the opposite side of the third man, the first man walks into that aisle from the side I was attempting to exit from. He was still on the phone but wasn't speaking. It was just up to his ear. Then I decided I wasn't being paranoid and started mentally begging my boyfriend to come back. I was too scared to walk past either of them and couldn't find the third guy. so I stayed until my boyfriend was in view again. Then I practically ran out the aisle and told my boyfriend what happened. He was pissed and wanted to see the men, but I just wanted to leave and to never see them again. Last summer, I was working in Florida. I'm from Canada, but got to work at Walt Disney at a summer job. It was one of the most fun experiences I'd ever had. Then I spent most of the summer on Disney property. One day though, the Adventure Zone graphic novel was released, and I had to get my hands on that. The only place I could get a copy was Barnes & Noble's, and the only free way I could get there was taking a bus to Walmart and then walking for about an hour. It was my day off, and I figured I might as well. Getting to Barnes & Noble was fine, but on the way back to the Walmart bus stop I had to walk past the parking lot. As I was passing the parking lot, someone beeped their horn at me. I stopped to look over because I thought it might be one of my co-workers, as few of them had cars. A guy in a suit stepped out of the car and waved at me. He said hello, and I, being startled, tried to figure out if I knew him or not. It was a bad idea. He immediately commented on my appearance and asked where I was working. He also said that he could give me a drive back to wherever I was going. I was freaked out, but the impulse to not be rude was dangerously strong, and I told him I wasn't interested and enjoyed taking the bus. He laughed and said that, if I was interested, he could drive me home and get me a job at the hotel where he worked. For some reason, despite being pretty upset at this point, I kept speaking to him, and I told him the truth, that I couldn't work anywhere other than the company that sponsored my visa, Disney. He laughed a second time and told me the visa wouldn't be a problem. It was at that point that my survival instinct finally overrode my friendliness, and I hurriedly told him, "No thanks, I'm moving back to Canada. Goodbye," before booking it into the Walmart. This sucked. In the Walmart, I grabbed a few items and went to cash out. Still freaked out, I tried to talk to the employee who was cashing me, so that maybe she could contact someone about the man. For all I knew, this could be some sort of dodgy scheme, but I was unsure. Unfortunately, that wasn't much better. She was extremely dismissive. She made a couple of jokes, saying things like, "Well, he was cute at least. Didn't you want a ride home?" and laughing at me. I didn't cry, but I could feel my face turning red, because I felt patronized over something that had really upset me. Thankfully, the woman behind me in line asked if I was okay, and tried to tell the clerk that I was obviously not trying to joke around, but she didn't seem to care much. Once I got outside, I was thankful that there were other Disney cast members at the bus stop. I didn't speak to any of them, but at least I didn't feel as vulnerable. So Walmart parking lot guy, I hope the next time I go to Florida we don't meet. And Walmart clerk, I don't particularly feel like meeting you again either. As soon as I was sure my laptop was dead, I ran to school and frantically tried to locate the quickest, most economical replacement I would be able to afford in order to meet my medical school's IT requirement and resume my studies. I located a Walmart about 25 minutes away, in the distant burbs of a city I just made my home, where I could find a brand name laptop for $250 and pick it up that same evening. Fearing for my academic future, I forked over the dough and jumped in my car. The 10-mile drive from the highway was all used car lots, thrift stores, and double wides. I arrived at my destination with a fairly nuanced opinion on why this pickup location had met my price criteria. I came in the front door of the Walmart in my usual kit, black jeans, tank top, shades, and several different women who called me baby directed me to the electronics section, where another woman informed baby that baby's laptop order could not be filled as a consequence of demand. I took off my shades. I hadn't come this far to leave empty-handed. I'd like to look at the laptops you have in stock, I told her. She waved her hand, and up stepped the guy. I think the reason I let him stand so close to me was the fact that his arms were half as long as the average person's arms, and it momentarily shifted my perspective. I learnt last week that that's called phocomelia. I really do learn something new every day. We walked over to the laptop aisle so close that I kept kind of tripping over him. Then he turned and looked me straight in the eyes like a fortune teller or seer and pronounced, "Your pupils are really huge." "I take a medication that makes my pupils really huge for ADHD, I replied. "I know, they're always like that. They're really big. Are you not used to being outside during the day?" I didn't know what to do with that one. I figured it was like a foul ball. Didn't follow it. "I used to be in law enforcement," the guy says, smiling widely. "What do you do?" Was that supposed to make me feel better? I was trying to imagine him handcuffing someone with his tiny arms. It seemed difficult. "I'm a med student," I said. He nodded and said something about laptops. I also said something about laptops. "So, are you old enough to drink?" he asked me. I could smell his breath. Generally, dead things smell better. "Yes." "How old are you?" 26. "Do you like horses? Motorcycles?" "I'm not actually into any of those things." "I used to do both of those things." "Do you have a boyfriend?" He's leaning closer now. I'm so close to the laptop. I need that laptop. "Yeah, I've been with a guy for 5 years. "Well, congratulations." He says it like we're at a bar mitzvah or something. He leans into the laptop cage and pulls out my desired laptop. "You're a real stand-up gal for not dumping him, you know. I was with a girl for a long time. We lived together and everything, but it didn't work out." "Oh," I said, reaching for the laptop. He smiles and I realize he has A, pupils that are bigger than mine, and B, the kind of teeth that give Appalachia a bad name. Long story short, she went to prison. "Oh, wow. I'm sorry about that." "Are you sure you're old enough to drink?" he asks. This is awkward, so I try to make conversation. "What's the difference between a Walmart and a super Walmart?" "Well, they're basically the same thing except we sell drugs." Eyebrows moved. At this point I broke his unnerving stare and hightailed it for the cash wrap, where the woman who called me baby was waiting to serve me. As I checked out, the guy hung just over my shoulder and informed me that he had a pet snapping turtle. "You've got to see her. She's a beaut." "Don't they snap?" I had to try to involve the cash wrap lady in the situation, and I looked at her. "Oh, they snap, baby," she said. "But his turtle is beautiful. She's a precious thing." "She acts just like a kitty," the guy assured me. "She's brown and yellow, real big. You sure you don't want to come see her? She's in my truck." "Oh, thanks, but I gotta go," I exclaimed, before running for the front of the store. "Hey, good luck in nursing school," he shouts after me. "Please, weirdo, let's not meet again." This happened a week or two ago, and I'm still a little shaken by it. That night, I had gotten out of work somewhere between 11:30 and midnight, and needed to take a quick run to Walmart before heading home. Being that it was late, I drove through the lot for a bit, trying to find a close spot, and noticed an older truck following my car. I didn't think much of it, just figured they were doing the same. I finally found my spot, and noticed they parked 2 spots away from me. Again, I just figured they wanted a closer spot too. Without really thinking, I glanced over at the truck and there were 2 men. I noticed the older one, 50 to 60-ish. The driver was calling me and trying to get my attention. For reference, I'm a 19-year-old female, and I quickly dipped into the store. He was calling after me the entire time. Immediately, warning bells were blaring in my head. I tried to get through the aisle fairly quickly to lose him, but he found me multiple times and kept telling me how pretty I was and asking things from how old I was to if I was in a relationship or if I was interested in older men, just being inappropriate in general. I'm normally a fairly shy person, and I get a little awkward in situations like this. I tried to keep myself and tell him I wasn't interested and to leave me alone to no avail. He ended up following me through the checkout line, just staring at me. After checking out, I finally asked one of the male employees to escort me to my car, which he did, and the man finally left me alone. The entire time in the store, the other guy he was with disappeared, and that set me on edge even more. I still can't help but wonder if he would have tried something if I went outside alone. So creepy man at Walmart, let's not meet again. Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed in tonight's trip to Walmart. I know I certainly did. If you enjoyed yours, don't forget to let me know down below. And as always, a huge thank you to my incredible patrons who really help me out by donating as little as $1 a month to help keep the channel running. Thanks guys. As you can imagine, your help is always tremendously appreciated. If you'd like to get your name on screen and become a patron, you can find all the info in the description by clicking the link to where it says Patreon. Isn't that just swell? So yes, I hope you guys did enjoy Walmart. If you haven't figured this out by now, which I'm sure most of you have, Walmart is a supermarket. It's a big supermarket in the US, Mexico, and Canada maybe? I'm not sure. I know it might be in other places too. It's quite big. In England, it's called Asda, so I know they're there. But it's really Walmart. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed tonight's video. Alright guys, well with that, it's time to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.